Rock isn't dead. It's in flux.
Hi, everyone. I am Britt with Rock and Flux, and I am joined today by the band Sacred Skin. They're both named Brian. So this is going to be a fun conversation. Can you guys just introduce yourselves and kind of get me started on how Sacred Skin came to be about? I think you formed in the spring of 2020, so you're kind of a new band.
Yeah, I'm Brian Tarney, and that's Brian DaMert. I guess he'll have to... You can call ourselves Tarney and DaMert if that helps in the interview. We formed in... it was 3 years ago, probably almost to the date.
I'm Brian DaMert, and I agree with that statement.
And how did you all, how do you know each other? How did you decide to kind of get together and form a band?
Yeah, so we are actually really old friends. We've known each other for probably nearly 15 years, okay. I'd say. We met in San Francisco. I moved to LA in 2010, and Brian DaMert moved to LA in 2017. So it was probably only a matter of time. He was leaving all his bands in San Francisco and starting a new project here. I was playing in a few bands here in LA, and we just kept bumping into each other and hanging out and chatting, and eventually got into the studio, started working on some of the tracks that DaMert had been writing already, and I was really impressed with them and saw the potential. And then the lockdown happened a couple weeks later, so it just was perfect timing for us to hunker down and shelter together and make a record.
Yeah. Did you record and write Decline of Pleasure during COVID?
Yes. Yeah, like he said, there was, I kind of came to LA and I was looking to start a new project, and I was, writing some songs and some demos and kind of hoping to start a band. And I was looking to connect with other like-minded people that were in the scene that wanted to, collaborate with me. Some of those songs we brought into the original sessions, and then most of the songs we just kind of wrote within that lockdown time period, which for both of us was kind of great because both of our jobs were super impacted by the shutdowns and we did not work. So we basically had full time to dive into the studio and to kind of craft the sound.
So you were meeting together in a studio to record the album?
We were during the don't leave your house, no one's out. We would just go straight to the studio and spend all day there every day when it was...
It was actually really cool because our studio is, it's a private lockdown studio, but it's in the middle of Hollywood, kind of normally a very irritating location. A lot of crazy people running around, but it was
just generally loud, just it's really loud.
There's a police station around the corner, so there's just constant sirens. It was just a really kind of cool meditative time. We just were just all alone in Hollywood. It was like a ghost town, and got to really focus in and writing a lot of music, and it was cool.
And that must have been something else to kind of see that change.
It was, yeah. I mean, it was definitely eerie. It was a great distraction for sure.
Yeah. For sure. I mean,
as the world was falling apart, we were just okay.
It really kind of informed the title of the album.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely, that makes sense for sure. I like almost, I think, every song on that album. I think they're all, it flows together well, but they all have a little bit of a unique feel too. And I just think it turned out really, really cool. Have you released any of the songs as singles, or you kind of just let it flow, sort of? How do you handle releasing new music and that? How do you see all of that with social media now and, the streaming and everything?
Yeah. Well, in terms of the album flow, I have to credit Brian for that. He really had the vision on the flow for the album, since he's a great DJ and just, is good at kind of piecing together the tracks, and he even writes down tempos and keys and things and has the foresight to do that. But yeah, in terms of now these days, we released most of the songs as singles because we kind of tried to write each song in the album as if it were a single.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So we just kind of spread those suckers out a year, or how long was it?
I think it was 14 months of singles being released before the album finally dropped.
I think for us, an unsigned band, trying to like gain traction in the noise economy where, if things move so fast, like you kind of have to be able to release a lot of songs to kind of get people's attention. It's one thing if you're on a label and you can afford PR and you can afford amazing tours or opportunities, or, you have a team working for you. You can maybe take 3 or 4 songs or even, one song and have it go a really long way. Or you're lucky and you write a song that just completely tracks with your audience. But for us, we just had to, which is fine. I enjoyed releasing that many singles, but we just
it really was an album of singles. And I think maybe we're recording our second album right now. And I think we're going to probably lay off a little bit on just the heavy hooks and just pop. Just on, I just like, it really almost was this debate of like, what songs are going to be the singles, and probably in an alternate dimension, like those could have been singles for a few different bands. The way that the album kind of came out, because I just think every song on that album is actually pretty much single worthy. So yeah, it was just kind of like, what are we in the mood to put out at this point? And I guess it was also just weighing the different styles, because I think that there's a lot of styles, genres that we kind of hit on the record. And it was just like, well, should we now kind of pivot to a song that's a little bit more, post-punk versus one that's like a little more synth poppy or something like that.
Yeah. See, it's funny though, like this always comes up on I tend to lean to like the synth post-punk world. Most of the artists that I talk to are of that. But I also do feel like there is a community kind of you all forming, at least from my perspective. And I feel like it's all kind of interchangeable, right? Because like post-punk now basically embodies, I think it's like the new wave.
Yeah,
sure.
Which if you were to like really subgenre us in like the post-punk world, which we don't really use that term, I guess, too often towards ourselves. I mean, we would say we're much more like new wave, new romantic in terms of the sound, I think, overall, where it's more maximal versus a lot of the kind of minimal synth stuff that's out these days. But yeah, we certainly feel embraced by that community. So that's a good thing.
And Brian DaMert, you are the singer, correct?
Yeah. I mean, just kind of like how the songs all sound a little bit different. I think like throughout that album, I was kind of just finding my voice within that album. Some of the songs I'd tracked the vocals before we had even met up. So yeah, it is me singing the songs.
It would probably be a disaster if I were the one singing the songs. So
he's got there's some backup vocals layered in there.
We lucked out by having a very strong vocalist between the two of us. I really think it is that is the glue that really holds the sound together, and what makes it quite unique from. I mean, I think there's a song, for instance, "Stay Awake" on the record, which I think fits quite into like more like post-punk dark wave genre, but there's still really the way Brian sings it and kind of gives it a more powerful vocal is what then probably a lot of the more kind of muted, low-pitched vocals you hear in a lot of that dark wave sound. So I think that's really what separates us from a lot of the
right. Like you do sing deeper, but it's not like Joy Division deeper.
Yeah, I'm more of an emotive, expressive, melodic singer. I just always have been that way, and it's just how I naturally write. And I think that's also a differentiator in our band that I'm kind of pushing it a little harder in terms of my range and kind of exploring some space and sound that other people within the scene or what have you are not. And not because I'm trying to be different. It's just that's just kind of where my vocals kind of land.
It was kind of the icing on the cake that like made me walk away from the other projects I was working on. When I started hearing the way he was singing, I was like, this is what I'm looking to do.
Well, it is cool because you do like that deeper voice, but I agree, you are a little bit more emotive. So, songs like Far Away sound different than something like Earthbound. You know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. I think they definitely do sound different. They're in, actually, well, their keys aren't that different. But for me, like Earthbound is really what the kind of sound I'm trying to achieve. More so, I'd say. Yeah, a little bit. But I love both those styles.
Yeah. And being the opener, which is, it was kind of interesting move, I think, on our end, because I don't think a lot of the rest of the record sounds totally like Earthbound's sort of almost in a league of its own.
Yeah. That's why I brought it up, though, because like those two songs are so different, but like your vocals it brings them together, but it makes it very clear that you're the same band doing that song.
Yeah, I would also say that the palette of sounds we use is pretty similar through all of our music as well.
Mhm.
That's true.
And
That definitely helps.
Yeah, that's something we pretty much use the same drum machine on every song.
Similar synths, if not the same.
Yeah.
There's there's like one synth patch that we pretty much use on every track.
But it's by design, and I feel like that's how you really shape a sound.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah. Limitations are good in the studio, and to like work with the tools you have,
Right.
and it kind of will help like thread the needle between all the songs, and it's also just like a good experiment to do as much as you can with the tools you have, because nowadays it's so easy to just reach for any plugin or any sound. I mean, everything is at your fingertips. So to be restrictive is kind of an art within itself.
And I mean, it's so easy to just throw something in there for the sake of throwing it in, but that can get really muddy really quickly.
Totally. Yeah, agreed. So, I mean,
when you listen to a lot of records from the 80s, you can at least an exercise I can do is because I know when a lot of the various synths and samplers and drum machines came out. You can go listen to a Depeche Mode record, for instance, and on Black Celebration, which came out in like 85, 86, I know exactly what they used to make that record. And I know why the record previous to that sounds different. So try to sort of think in those terms. But yeah, maybe maybe this next record releasing later this year will be a success for us and we can afford a new synth. So we can
no more synths for a while.
Enhance our sound a little bit or something.
We paid off our synths. Now we can't.
We
buy anymore.
I don't know. I saw your story today.
It took a while.
Your studio setup looked pretty cool. So
yeah, I mean, Brian had a pretty impressive collection already of synths, but we bought one or two on minimum payments there.
And if that's a preview of the new stuff you have, I think it's going to sound pretty cool. So I'm excited to hear.
Yeah, we're excited too.
Yeah,
we just have a problem of narrowing down the 50 plus demos that seem to be Brian DaMert's computer right now.
That's a good thing,
I'm kind of like just like writing all the time, like little demos. Like kind of for me, like some people journal. Like I kind of just write little song demos constantly. I try to write like not one every day, but I mean a couple a week. So it just kind of adds up when we are trying to write an album and there's just like, a lot of stuff to sift through. And it's hard to, I think one thing, we're still figuring out this new album, but I think one thing we've talked about is trying to make it a little bit more cohesive, right, Brian? I mean, between the songs, because like you said, a song like Far Away does sound a lot different than a song like Earthbound. And of course we're going to have outliers in every album because like outliers are fun, but maybe try to,
but on that note, there's a song we're writing right now that is like Earthbound on steroids. So,
I like that song. So I mean,
it really kind of touches that Phil Collins kind of energy.
Yeah, we love the Phil Collins, Peter Gabriel energy.
Yeah.
And we're trying to really kind of push that forward and into. It's always a debate of whether the audience in the goth scene is there for it, but we got to at least put one of those on a record. Oh
yeah. So Eyes Closed is another song that's on this album as well. And I noticed that you had Drab Majesty did a remix of that song. And I'm a big fan of theirs too. How did that remix come about?
Yeah, well, I used to play in his band VR Sex. In fact, he was sharing our studio with us at the time. He's an old, close friend of ours. So I would actually say that while we were, it wasn't so much that I was even transitioning out of VR Sex. It's just like the lockdown happened and things just got moving with Brian and I, but Andrew was really, really supportive of the project. And we were kind of early on bouncing a lot of tracks by him. And Eyes Closed was just a song that he gave us some cool input on and he just really, really liked. So we asked him to remix it and he was kind enough to jump on it and do it.
Yeah.
It turned out really well. I like both versions of that song.
Sure.
Which, sometimes
totally.
He's a very talented person.
Yeah.
He's really on his studio set up and his workflow. We actually got to get a little sneak peek of the
we went in a couple times while
and it was really inspiring.
He did an awesome that song for me is just a personal favorite. I was really proud of how it came out, and it's really exciting to have the remix be just as good in its own way.
Yeah. It just added a little bit of difference to it, but it still kept
Sure.
you know,
Yeah.
you know that it's the same song. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's good. That's good.
Sometimes when you do a remix, it's debatable, you know what I mean? But it's well executed.
That's what we do when we do remixes for the bands. We were like,
we
really go psycho.
But
we just got hit up to do a couple remixes recently.
Oh, cool.
I got hit up for one today, and I'm just like, I don't know, because it takes us just as long to do a remix as it is to write a song, and we're trying to get this album done.
What makes you decide to do one or not? Just whether you like the music?
Well, we did. Yeah, I mean, we did a trade.
We did a trade. Yeah, trades are good.
We did about Testamento, which
that was awesome.
Earthbound, and we loved the remix.
So great. That might be my favorite remix.
Yeah, but then we did their song Michelle, which we were really proud of. I think the first remix we did was for Patriarchy.
That was our first release.
Yeah, then we did the remix for Health.
I was going to bring that one up. You did Cyberpunk for them, right?
Yeah,
yes.
That was a really obvious one to do. Health is a big band, and they're also John from Health is one of my best friends. So
they're so nice. They were one of my first interviews when I started the website and the podcast. And I think that they're so good to their fans, and they're so
amazing.
They're just open to people who love music and other musicians and stuff. And it's really, honestly, for me, a breath of fresh air to see a band of that success still behaving the way that they do, because they don't necessarily need to, you know?
If I walked into John's house right now, he'd have a headset on and be on his computer interfacing with fans. Like, that's what he does all day.
He's so nice.
It's amazing, yeah.
Yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, they're great. That remix that you did turned out really well too, and that's what I'm saying. Like, it feels like there's like this community forming, because it's like, and maybe I'm in this my own little world because I like all of these bands, but I don't know. Like, I notice all these different remixes, and Spotify like helps me find them too, because like that's how I found you all initially, was because I was listening to Health.
Spotify does a really amazing job at that, and that's what I think why they're the leader in terms of people using that streaming service. Now we just need them to start paying royalties.
I know.
But the algorithm is wonderful. They do a good job at that.
But they do need, I agree, they need to treat their artists better, or all artists better. So then you released Killer's Mind, which is a single in October of last year. That one, I feel like that song is really interesting. And I could be hearing this incredibly wrong, but like I definitely hear, you know, some of the influence of The Cure, but like the clap noises that come up, it just reminds me of Billy Idol, and I don't know if there's any purposeful influence.
You know, Billy Idol uses he uses a Lindrum, we use a Lindrum, so
I'm not wrong.
I mean, it's probably the exact same. I mean, if you're it's probably a Lindrum clap.
You know, I don't think we are entirely set out to be like retro. Like, we're definitely trying to push forward in terms of our sound, but the palette of sounds that we've settled on that really work for us, you'll hear that. You'll hear those. You'll hear a clap or a snare drum or whatever, and be like, "Oh, that reminds me of something," because it tends to be the Lindrum, which was just, you know, heavily used during that era. But in terms of like songwriting or anything like that, I mean, Billy Idol, we absolutely love him.
Yeah, me too.
I think also too, it's like if you actually listen to that song, like the drums that I programmed are actually real live samples. And if we could afford it and had the time, of course, we'd love to just really do real drums. It's just the actual like cost and time of doing real drums it adds quite a headache for a band at our level. But ideally, we would love to do real drums on some songs, because
you all have played live and things like that. So, you know, speaking of the fact that it's just the two of you, tell me kind of how you work that out when you're performing live together.
We have a full band live.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah. So we have Vanessa Robinson, she plays bass and synth live. And then we have Delano Hillard, who's our drummer, and they're both awesome. So the live show is 4-piece. It's like a rock show. I mean,
Brian and I
are guitar. It's cool.
It's definitely a little bit more rock band live. We do maintain a lot of the elements of the album. Like, we'll have the live drum, but we'll take all the samples of the electronic drums and we'll put those on samplers on the kicks and snares, for instance. And basically favor those live. So it still kind of maintains that flavor. But it's also like, it's cool to have it sound different live. Obviously, you don't want to sound like you're just doing karaoke over your own songs.
And you want to sound good live. Like,
I mean,
think about like a band like 9 Inch Nails, right? They're better live than they're recording.
Sure,
and it is different because it is more rock band live, you know?
It's definitely edgier. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, I feel like the feedback we've gotten, we worked really hard on the live show. Yeah. We rehearsed for a long time before we went out there and started playing, and we've gotten really, really amazing feedback. And I think it's a strong show.
And you've played with AFI, which is it's a decently sized band, and then you played with Traders last year, which I just did an interview with them. They're super cool too.
Yeah, we played with them, and she passed away at the Blast Theater. And then last March, AFI asked us to open their sold-out show at the Hollywood Palladium. So that was really awesome.
That's been cool. Do you have any tour?
That was like the third or fourth show or something, and we were just like, oh my God, okay.
That's cool. Any plans to tour?
Yeah, well, we're playing Verboten Festival in May, which is in Vancouver. So I think we're going to do a little West Coast tour around that. There might be something else happening in March that we can't talk about yet. Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Beyond that, we're planning on releasing a full-length album in October. So there'll be, I think, a lot of touring in the fall through
that makes sense.
Winter. Yeah.
Anything about what people can expect from that next album? I know we talked about it a little bit, but anything else you would want people to know?
I think, I don't know. I mean, I think that it's going to be awesome because we're, constantly refining our skill sets. So I think it'll be a, better production than the first time around, even though, we're proud of it. But, you're always learning new tricks in the studio.
Yeah. I feel like, just looking at the body of work, I mean, it's obviously not finished, but I feel like it's going to be a little bit more minimal, but I think end up being more impactful because we're going to strip some elements away, but the ones that we leave are going to kind of convey the groove a little harder. And I think overall, I think it's going to be a little bit, I mean, I don't want to use this word because it sounds kind of lame, but dancey, maybe. It seems like it's a little funkier. But
well, I think that's where like maybe Killer's Mind was kind of going in a direction was, I think we stripped that one back a little more. I personally have a real problem with bloating our tracks with tons of production. So we're trying to strip stuff back a little more. But, like Killer's Mind had a really like live bass part going on.
I think like the difference is like a lot of post-punk sounding kind of bands, mostly the bass lines are eighth notes, just running eighth notes the whole time. And if you look at a song like Circles or our song Stay Awake, it's just downstroke eighth notes the whole time. Yeah. And a song like Killer's Mind, it's kind of more of a true like bass and drum groove where the kick drums kind of matching, the bass hitting on up notes and kind of being a little bit more funky. And I think that's something we're trying to incorporate a little bit more.
I think there'll be kind of a less is more experiment where we kind of have less parts, but the parts that are in there are really kind of more groove oriented and whatnot.
Well, that sounds pretty cool to me. So I'm looking forward to hearing it.
Yeah,
me too.
So one question that I typically ask everybody who comes on this show, because it's basically our branding, is rock dead? And for me, like, I think that rock encompasses everything. So when we talk about new wave or post-punk or whatever that is, to me, those are all rock bands, right? Because like you were speaking about your live show, you're still a band performing at the end of the day, right? Regardless of your recording process or the instruments that you use in that. So what are your thoughts with that? And really, honestly, the music scene in general, it's a tough business to be in nowadays. So I personally don't think it's dead. I think it's in flux. So it's ever changing. And I think there's both good and bad elements to that. So I'd be curious to know.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah. I think rock and I think music are thriving. I think it's really strong. I think the music industry is broken. Personally, I've been actually in the industry side of working as a promoter and running concert venues for my entire career for over 25 years. So I've seen a lot of changes since I started doing this in the late 90s. And, being a DJ, being in a band, running venues, all those things. And this might be one of the most exciting times for music in terms of what's coming out. It's just the industry has to get caught up, I was like, this recent Grammy Awards, they were just doing these segments where they had like pre-recorded segments where they had super fans sitting around talking about like when they like went and like, got a poster signed by Harry Styles at their show and whatnot. Like, just like the things that they were like filling time with at the, at the Grammys. Like, so there's just a lot of really cringy stuff happening in the industry. And I'm sure that's with a lot of industries right now, but like the old guard is still kind of their gatekeeping. And there's this huge influx of talent right now that needs to get lifted up outside of like the confines of like streaming algorithms and whatnot. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, no, I agree. I don't think it's dead. I think maybe it's more fractured, whereas before where it's like, just like grunge music was popular, just like in the 80s, like 80s hair metal was popular. And it was the kind of like this, it was just there's one genre within rock that kind of reigns supreme. It's just not like that anymore. Right now, arguably, there's every subgenre is, within rock music, there is some of the best stuff coming out ever. It's just that fan base is being kind of dispersed among all these genres, whereas before it was kind of like everyone was going after one thing. And in a way, it's really cool because technically everything is popular right now, right? So it's a really interesting time. So I don't know how the music industry catches up with that. I just think there's just a much huger middle field now for bands.
I think
it's really for us. We have to get our live show to a point where people are getting in front of us and experiencing it, because I think it is really special, and that's where we're going to have our success most likely, because that's where artists function these days, especially an artist on our level. It's just you just be on the road and playing all the time.
No, that's for sure true. And like merch is another thing.
Sure.
Especially if you can do it yourselves, you know what I mean? Because it's just another way for you all to fund what it is that you're doing. And I still believe that there is, I refer to it as like a second wave that's coming. So it's kind of like the whole new wave bands that came out of the 80s. I feel like we're going to see that with you guys and some of the other bands that I'm seeing that are really starting to get some traction, which I think is great. Maybe I'm biased because I really love that kind of music, but
no, I mean, I think I agree. I think it's great music. So
yeah, I mean, there's been really good scenes happening as someone who came kind of age in the 90s, it was a very strange decade. There's been a lot of good musical genres that have come back, that have kind of formed once again since the 2000s. And it's been really interesting to watch. I think I would, if I were to really break it down, even like with like synth pop and that sort of thing, I think we're probably on the fourth wave of synth pop at this point.
Yeah, that's true.
And I think what's nice in the lens of postmodernism is you're able to kind of look back and extrapolate from the various eras and be like, what you find sort of interesting and can bring to your sound. Yeah, no, the concert industry is doing amazing. Rock bands are.
Yeah, look at a band like a festival like Cruel World, where you have legacy artists and local artists from Los Angeles like opening up within that same festival. It's really cool.
Yeah, I agree. But that's a cool thing about music. It's like that melting pot, that brings all these different people together. I had a comment on like the health interview that I did, and they were like, "Oh, there's so many different people at this show. It was so cool, blah, 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 blah." And it's true. Like that's the cool thing about music, because different people of different backgrounds find themselves with a common ground, and it's music or a band that they like.
We've been kind of finding this contingent of metalheads coming out to our show.
Cool. Random, but like that is really interesting, that they're...
Well, we tend to do these like dual harmony guitar stuff. There is like some, and also I think a lot of people that just grew up in the 80s or loving 80s music, it becomes, I know for me, like I like metal just as much as I like synth pop. So I get it. But we've had like some pretty straight up metalheads coming to our shows and just like, you guys are fucking awesome. And that's like, I think that is the highest compliment.
Absolutely. Because if they're not typically listening to something like Sacred Skin, but they like it and appreciate it. That's I think that's really interesting. That
to your point, also you start to see like lineups like Psycho Las Vegas, like doing more and more, like they have like their core metal bands, and you see more like post-punk and dark wave bands playing those festivals too. So I think that probably more than ever, honestly, when I was first like listening to punk music and listening to bands like Sonic Youth and Nirvana and Dinosaur Jr. and all that stuff in the late 80s and early 90s, that's all I listened to, because if I'd listened to anything else, my friends would have disowned me. It was a real like, maximum rock and roll and all that thing. It was like a real scene. And like, I don't think scenes so much. I think a lot of people are chameleons these days, and you know, kind of float through different. There's no such rules anymore, and I think that's really good for music.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I think it's great. Any last comments? Anything that you would want listeners to know about Sacred Skin? Any other final things or information that you want to share?
Yeah, just look out for tour dates this year. Look out for a new record and singles starting to come out in the summer. So yeah, we're really excited. I think it's just going to be an awesome year, and we're just really, really looking forward to getting back on the road.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I mean, also just if anyone's listening that, you know, has messaged us or, you know, on my personal Instagram or ours or whatever, or at a show, like all the kind words about the sound and the music. I mean, we really appreciate it. I mean, I know I really appreciate it. It's a huge, you know, it's the reason why we do this and why we keep going, is to, you know, get that positive feedback and to hear that our songs are resonating with people. It is really, it's incredible. So yeah, so thanks to everyone for listening. And we're going to keep going.
Please do. You guys are great. And I really appreciate you both taking the time to speak with me.
Of course.
This.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Thanks for having us. Honestly,
I will keep following you and supporting you all however
appreciate
I
it.
possibly can. So thank you to all of our listeners, and thank you to Sacred Skin. Check them out on Spotify, all the streaming services, so Bandcamp. So please go ahead and give them a listen. Thanks, guys.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.